Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today, let's jump into an arena, a topic in an arena that is rather important, right? Most topics are important, but this is significantly important, and that is love and peace. You might be asking yourself, well, why are we talking about love and peace? Well, I mean, really? Turn on the news, look at the world history, right? Everything in world history. Look at organizations, look at culture, look at everything. And you see where love nor peace are really taking center stage or leading the charge, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about those dynamics, and it's important. And I think when you see it from the perspective that I present it, I think that you'll be able to be able to in an actionable way let the normal love that's within you kind of flourish and have an impact on others, not only in your organizations but in all of culture, all parts of your life. You know, it's not just about organizations; it's about having thriving lives and getting to that place. And it isn't perfection, right? There is never going to be a perfect. We will always have a challenge. You know, it's the 80-20 rule. You may have 80% of it knocked out, but 20% of it will always be an outlier. You may have your professional world totally locked down, but maybe you have some, personal relationships that you're working on, and vice versa, right? Or within the community, within your church, within your civic groups, within, right? It's always going to be there. In some ways, I guess we're perpetually in a whack a mole situation. And as long as we make friends with the fact that, hey, things are going to come, right? That we will deal with them, we will manage them, we will overcome those things. But we have to be settled in knowing that and reduce your expectation for a perfect life. The absolute perfect life doesn't exist. And for those who've ever attained what they thought to be a perfect life, were shocked and amazed that something came out of left or right field to upset that perfect life. And then that became the lesson, right? That's that 20% outlier that kind of nudges our life along, keeps us growing, whether we want to or not. All right, so let's get into love and peace. Well, it's easy to understand that there are many forms of love, not just romantic love, right? But there's brotherly love and there's, agape love. There's many facets of love, whether it's individual, whether it's, the culture at large, your family, all of the things. There's love is, it's like a diamond. There's so many cuts on this thing. But what tends to occur, and you can see this now reflected in organizations and in culture. You can see it in politics. You can see it in geopolitical upheavals and war and that sort of thing, where there isn't peace, right? And so the mindset and the actions follow. Let's arrive at peace. Then we can build the love. But that's exactly opposite of what we need to do. What we need to do is build the love, right? Build up that love, and then the peace will follow that. Peace will never be sustained on its own. That's not peace, right? Because that kind of peace is more of a dictatorship. That's a control mechanism. Love requires that we give others sovereignty, right? We can't be judgmental, right? We can discern. The stove is hot. The ice is cold. We can discern things. We can put boundaries up for things that aren't going to mesh with our life, that maybe are toxic and these sorts of things. But ultimately, you're never going to be able to enforce a peace that doesn't start first with love. And then to unravel that, can love really exist if you don't respect the sovereignty of others. It can't. It cannot. If your perception is that I must crush others to create peace, then you have it all backwards. Now there's a far difference between saying I have to go crush others to create peace and I need to maintain my boundaries. Maintaining boundaries is absolutely fine. But but the desire or need or feeling like you have to go crush others, this is where it's a slippery slope with competition if we dial it back from wars and so forth and we go to competitions, right? You see competition everywhere, sports and all these, more healthy side of competition. But then you get into competition with the professional environments, those professions that are fighting for a particular customer base, and they're willing to, do a lot of things, and finally they cross a line, right? So, and then you back that up in that competition, you see it in families and in friends and all these things, jealousies, and all this is derived from this. Somebody has to lose so that I can win. So for me to have peace, others have to be suffering in some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm saying that pretty starkly. Most people would say, well, no, I don't believe that. Well, you might say that, but I guarantee you know somebody out there who would never say those words, but that's how they conduct their world, right? They're out there trying to crush other people. It doesn't matter if it's rumor and innuendo, all the things, right? Talking bad about people, all the stuff. It doesn't matter if it's that or if it's more organized or if it's elevated where they're actually getting people together. This is where conspiracies come from. And I don't mean conspiracy theories, but actual conspiracies, right? Where two or more get together to conspire to hurt or suppress or do negative things to other people, right? That's where all of this is born. It's born from a competition, but the competition also emanates from the only way for me to achieve a peace or a satisfaction, right? Because now we're replacing peace with satisfaction for me to feel good, because that also gets equated with peace. I'm at peace when I feel good. Really? Well, you can have very little to nothing and feel good, right? It's just a matter of perspective. But for those who must go out there and crush others' lives and I must dominate other people, no. They'll never be at peace. They'll never be at peace. They may achieve what they feel as a satisfaction, but it's short-lived. And often this is where we see the physics of what some would regard as, and I'm using this term in a generic sense, karma, just because we understand it. You go out there and you do bad things to others, and guess what? Bad stuff is like a boomerang. It just goes around the room and then whap right in the back of your head and makes you do a triple somersault like you used to see on the cartoons back in the day. So that's essentially what, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Doesn't matter if it's words you say or things you do. And you put out bad into the world, you put out negative, hurtful things into the world, and, it's going to come back to you. And this is why it's short-lived. But now reverse course on this. If you want to achieve a peace or get to a level of actual peace, more of a contentment element side of peace, I guess you could say, that stillness of feeling good, I feel peaceful. I'm very centered and peaceful and grounded. If you want to get to that, you first have to reconcile and love. I know, it sounds wild. Is it that easy? It's kind of that easy. It really is kind of that easy. But in thinking about it, but in doing it, not often super easy. And why is that? Because oftentimes people have built up their lives, much of their existence has been to battle and go to war with family, friends, or people at their work, organizations, the world at large. I mean, their whole world has been out there starting fights that never need to happen so that they can then go, oh my gosh, I can't believe so-and-so said this. But, it's just this volley of stuff, right? It's this volley of, and everybody's trying to get the upper hand, trying to, one up and get on, higher ground, and I don't mean in a high-minded way, but they're trying to, uh, you know, one up others. But then playing every card in the deck, right, to one up them, but at the same time look like a victim or look like that they're this or they're that, whatever it is. Playing the game, right? They're playing games. They don't really want peace, because peace, they would implode. And why is that? Because then they would, in that moment where you eliminate those things, this is actually how you get to that contentment. You have to recognize that you're either doing that or people are doing that to you, and you need to create boundaries and get that toxicity out of your world, right? Or if you're the one that's doing that, stop doing that. Recognize it, but in that recognition, one way or the other, whether you're being affected by it or you're affecting others by it, then you will have this stillness that will kind of freak you out a little bit. And the reason why is you're going to feel guilt, you're going to feel bad, and the challenge here is, and this is what often leads to addictions and other things, is people get so scared because of the reality of who they, were. Oh my gosh, I was this person. Oh my gosh, and they feel so bad, right? And this is the time when those people also need love, right? Because their quick reflex might be to go to the bottle, go to drugs, go to any, excessive or obsessive behavior, negative behavior, and sometimes distractive behavior, right? Um, to such an extent, why? To cover it up, because they got right up to that place where they were starting to look inside and see who they were, or to free who they, that child in them, free that child in them, so that that child could come out and live and express and be its free self. But that's scary, and so it's scary. So what do? They mask it, and they go out and they do the addictive things. So it's a difficult journey, and not just individuals, but groups, whole nations can go through this. Whole nations can go through I won't say depression, although they can, not in economic terms, but in emotional terms. A downturn, right? A slump. You see it in economics as a depression or a recession and that stuff, and that affects people's moods and attitudes also. But if you see it for what it is, as you're starting to recognize and starting to get the toxic stuff away from you and to remove yourself from toxic environments, and and that environment that creates that conflict, that need to overcome or crush another, to feel like justified and validated. Rather, when you retract from that and you start to go, okay, and you start to look at those people as people on their own journey, learning their own lessons, and that they're just as broken as you are in their own way, right? They may be more emotionally broken or financially or physically, depending on life, right? Depending on what, because we all have different lives. We've all been dealt different hands, right? Somebody might be financially well off but emotionally a wreck from, conditioning and how they were brought up and all kinds of things. Others may have, been kind of conditioned to reflex to addictive behaviors. And so they have an addictive behavior, but yet everything else in their life is great. They come across as the functioning addict, right? And some not so well functioning. So you have a mix. We've got a mix of folks coming at this from many different angles. So the resolution is going to be a little different for everyone. But know this, when you recognize that others have their own brokenness, you start to see them differently. You don't see them as, the bad guy or the bad girl or the bad, whatever. You don't see that now. Now you see them as children, right? They're adults, right? But you see them as children who are put in struggling situations. And now love in your own heart now can be a helpful and healing thing versus a thing that you keep for yourself, only, and that you don't recognize that, others as not being worthy of. Because, like it or not, if you're going at war to kind of suppress somebody else's life, or to interrupt it, or to, nefariously, even if you think it's subtle or, minor, to do that, you are in effect doing that to yourself. You are doing that to yourself, and you are pulling yourself into a cycle. And that cycle is preventing you from having love, first of all, and then peace that comes from love, right? And even if that love is just a centered contentedness, right? And where do you find the love if it's just you? You may be in a relationship, and so you may have to, that presents its own hurdles, because now you're very close to somebody, and now you're trying to work these things out. Maybe you guys have intertwined scenarios going on with they and their mix of battles, and you and your mix of battles, and then your own battles, and it can get a little messy, right? But if you slow it down, you know, personally, if you think of it in very simple terms, is where does that love? How do you fill up the cup of, in your heart? If your heart is a cup, and that's where the love, resides. How do you fill that up? How do you fill that up? Do you rely on an activity? Do you rely on some idol? Do you rely on some thing you do? Do you rely on a person, right? Are you idolizing your person that you're in a relationship with, your kids? Are you a helicopter parent who relies on, their validation for you to feel good? That's an addictive behavior as well, codependence, right? No, simple thing to do is to look at it this very simple way, cut through all the noise. Whatever created this entire universe, right? The divine. I just call it the divine, right? So we can get away from all the labels and all the scary, all the little g things, little g words out there, right? The divine, the ultimate divine. If you just visualize that divine filling up your cup, filling you up with love, and giving you the ability to see others in their own light, not as nefarious, although they can be, right? They can do nefarious things, but at the core, broken, unhealed, and unaware. Some unaware, some aware and working on themselves, some unaware, not working on themselves, and they're just a wrecking ball in everybody's life, organizationally, personally, all in all facets. They're just a wrecking ball. I know a couple wrecking balls, right? They know who they are. and pretty much everywhere they go, they're a wrecking ball, and they know it. I think they know it. But they're the same people too that once they realize they're a wrecking ball, and this is where it becomes difficult, is, are you going to be the person that shoves their nose in it, or are you going to be a person who goes, you know what, it's okay, you can recover from this, but you're going to have to take the time to heal and not dive into some other distraction, whether it be some addictive behavior, some relationships, et cetera, right? Whatever it is, to distract yourself from what? Going inside and seeing the self inside of, seeing your inner self, seeing that child inside. And where was that child, prevented from having a particular, reassurance or validation that's real, right? Not a masking thing that's an addictive behavior, but perhaps you didn't get the emotional encouragement, right, from your parents. Perhaps you didn't get, XYZ. There's so many scenarios out there. Whatever it is, go inside and examine yourself. And by doing that, you bring that love into yourself that way. That's the only way. The only way. Let me say it one more time. The only way for you to be loving outside of yourself is to be loving within yourself first. First. If you do that, now you have that, right? You got that flow going. And now you become like a sprinkler of love, right? And it's not going to be a perfect scenario. Sometimes the sprinkler gets clogged up. We all have challenging days. We all have these things we're working through. And remember, I started this out when I mentioned the 80-20 rule. It's not going to be a perfect journey. In fact, the journey is not perfect because those challenges are reinforcing what I'm telling you right now. And then when you look around, now that you've heard this, if you're a person who hung through this, you are you cannot unsee it now. You will not be able to unsee what I just told you about. Visualizing everyone out there going through their struggles and in a state of in their own level of brokenness, right? But they don't heal by making them go into some non-sovereign, unaccepted, judgmental thing, right? So the way for me to heal isn't for me to, if I have a broken leg, isn't to shove me into a group of runners and say, "Hey, they run every other day. Why don't you run with them?" I've got a broken leg, not a leg that's out of shape, although it is out of shape. I've got a broken leg. It needs to heal, right? I don't need to go. I don't need to go into your group A and your group B and your group C. I need time within myself. I need quiet. I need to ground myself in nature. I need peace, right? And I'm only going to get peace. I know this because I need to bring the love in and heal myself and take the time. This isn't the time to go out and reflex and doing this things. Now, I can tell you this because I've been down this path myself. Yes, I have. And I think I mentioned in other videos where my told you about how my mom was OCD, and I picked up a thin level of that. I'm not to any level of I wouldn't even say I'm OCD, but I understand it, and I understand that oftentimes we'll do other things to avoid doing the important things. Right, the distractions. It's easier to enjoy the little distractions. It might be the binging the TV show, right? It might be you're having a cocktail with friends. It might be that you're going on all these vacations or you're doing all these and this is a tricky one too because it's great to celebrate, it's great to take vacations, it's great to do all those things. But I know people who are so overactive doing external things to such a capacity that they never look and never slow down. They don't even know who they are, right? And I say that with complete love because you want folks to understand who they are because that's the thing that's going to bring them peace. And the only way, let me come back to this now, going into the next only way, the only way for you to have peace with others is to have that love in yourself, and then that peace comes, and now you can be a bridge to love and peace with others. But you cannot externalize and say, well, we first have to be at peace with one another. Well, we have to have respect and all those things. But you cannot enforce peace with somebody who doesn't have a love for you. And I don't mean romantic love, although it can be if it's that kind of relationship. But but you cannot solve the problem backwards in this case. Okay, folks, we're putting the cart in front of the horse, right? And we're expecting that horse to know, to be able to do its job. No, love, your horse, the white horse of love, has to be in front of the cart, it pulls peace along. Peace is on the cart that the white horse of love is pulling. This is the fact, just the bottom line. And when you start to see people in the community and the culture and organizations this way, now what you do as a leader, or as a team member, as a member of any group or a part of your family or friend group, whatever, now you say, okay, bring that love in myself, understand others, have a loving way toward others, and then that peace is there, right? And when it isn't there, then those folks are, this is what somebody being unawakened is when they have not established that they have to have love to have peace, and that becomes externalized with others. That becomes an awakening, but you can also understand what it is when people are unawakened outside of yourself, right? And you can see this because they'll revert to very mechanized behaviors, right? Very unattached. And don't get me wrong, you have to be a little bit detached from your emotions to be able to see and manage things. But you have to be able to go there when you need to for yourself and with others. You need to be able to go there when it's necessary, but not have that used. You don't want your emotions to be another form, another mask, right? Oh, I just love everybody when you don't, right? This is, this is superficiality. This is where superficiality comes from. Oh, I'm going to be ultra professional, and I'm ultra professional, and I'm ultra professional. Me, I'm ultra professional. But underneath it all, you have a disdain for your team and for the customer, and you could really give a crap, right? There are people out there like that, okay? And if that's you, well, you know what you need to work on now. But that superficiality is also a mask, so we can't pretend. We can't, in this scenario, we can't fake it to make it. Too many people have tried to fake it to make it in this regard. It's one thing to go, hey, I'm really nervous and anxious about this speech I'm going to give, or this interview, or this meeting, and go, and to go, hey, I just need to buck up and do it. Yes, you do, right? That's the thing, but that's not faking it to making it to make it. That is just going determinedly. I'm going to go and do this thing. I got to get it done. This is what I need to do, right? Stepping up to the plate is not faking it to make it. Faking it to make it is being superficial across any elements of your life. Doesn't matter what it is. And if you're too superficial, right, and there'll be no peace that comes from it, because people can see superficiality and it's fake. And people don't like fake. Nobody wants fake. You just don't. I don't want to, get buy a product and have it be fake, right? You want the genuine article. You order something, you order it online, whatever, it's coming. You want that genuine article. You don't want to fake, I order a book and instead I get a picture of a book in the mail, right? That's fake, right? I don't want fake. We want real. We want genuine. We want real. But people can see through the superficiality. So make sure that you're not being superficial, that you're being genuine in all these things. And if you do, guess what? You're going to find you have more love within yourself. You can sustain it. And then you're also going to be able to understand when to create boundaries, who not to let into within some of those boundaries until you start to see that they are starting to get it, whether you have to communicate this with them, or you inculcate this through your programs, right, within your organization, for example, to where people understand. It's like, hey, we respect the sovereignty of everyone, and that everyone has a voice, right? It's a good start. It's a good start for allowing and creating the environment in an organization or in your life for others to be able to love, and for it to create a peaceful environment. You can have a super productive team in a very peaceful environment. It doesn't have to be like everybody's running around with their hair on fire. Okay. All right, folks, enough for that one for today. Hope you're having a great day. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage folks. And when you do that, not only are we helping to transform culture, right, and helping to create an environment where people can have loving and thriving and peaceful lives, but we're doing that within our own lives too, and within all of culture. And that's very special. Don't take that for granted when you have the opportunity to be that person and to create a bridge for others. All right, folks. Again, have a great day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.